I'm very excited to be joined by Kleber Mendonça Filho, a Brazilian writer-director celebrated for exquisitely crafted, politically incisive films like Neighboring Sounds, Aquarius, and Bacurau, which fuse genre play with an acute observation of Brazilian society. He began actually as a film critic before turning to directing, and this is his first Oscar-nominated film. The Secret Agent is an absolutely brilliant, thrilling movie that, again, turns a seemingly intimate story into a richly layered exploration of power, paranoia, and the invisible forces shaping everyday life. Thank you so much for being here, Kleber.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. I often tell you that the moment I landed in New York City to stay with my mother, who is turning 83 and managed to stay awake after my flight was delayed until past midnight, the first thing she wanted to tell me was that she loves The Secret Agent so much. And she had been in a restaurant with a girlfriend she had seen the film with, sitting next to a Brazilian woman who was also, once they started all talking about The Secret Agent, my mother realized that there was many deeper layers to the politics than she had understood on first viewing. So
That's
she went a
great.
second time. She's seen it twice in the theater.
That's great.
Yeah, I love it. So The Secret Agent is set in 1977, but you said it's very much haunted by what happened in Brazil between 2018 and 2022.
Yeah.
What was the first spark for you that told you this needed to be a period film rather than a contemporary one?
I always find it fascinating to discuss how the film came about because you put together different elements. I can tell you that the first spark was actually the desire to work with Wagner Moura, this great actor who today is a great friend. And so that's the first spark. The second thing is I had done a film called Pictures of Ghosts. It was my previous film, and I spent 7 years looking at archives for that film. And it took as long as it took, and it took me 7 years. And it was a really amazing experience making Pictures of Ghosts because I reconnected with many elements of the past, of my own past, my own personal history, the history of the city, Brazil, and also the history of cinema in many ways. So that film and the desire to work with Wagner led me down the path of writing The Secret Agent, which I wanted to set in 1977 when I was 9 years old. But slowly I understood that the logic of what I was writing was actually the logic of the 70s when Brazil was under a military dictatorship. And when I was writing, Brazil was under this government, far-right government, whose president truly wanted to bring back the good old days of the military dictatorship. So in a weird way, I found myself writing about the 70s, but stuck in a Halloween party of the 70s, which is what Brazil was going through between 2019 and 2022. And then once I understood that, I really allowed myself to go into the full logic of what I think the dictatorship meant. Basically, an authoritarian trying to not thinking democratically, but thinking more in terms of reshaping the whole country to his group's specifications. And that's not really the idea of democracy. And once I did that, I really went all in terms of getting this script for The Secret Agent ready. And I'm very happy with, how the film turned out because it's very much about the reconstruction of a moment in history rather than the dictatorship itself. It's very much about how it moved and how it thought rather than specific real life incidents.
Yes. I wonder how you made those concrete choices in production design, camera movement, and sound that helped you evoke the dictatorship without falling into kind of a vintage postcard because you don't want to be nostalgic
Yeah.
about the past.
I can give you a very practical example, which I have rarely discussed. Maybe I have, maybe only once. I don't know why. But the dictatorship had a few icons. The iconography of the dictatorship is quite easily recognizable if you're Brazilian and if you're in your 50s, which is my case. There was a car which is in the film, I always treated this car, and it was written into the script as a character. The film has many human characters, and this one character is a car. Well, we have two memorable cars in the film. The Volkswagen Beetle, the yellow one, that's one, but it's quite benign. And the other one is the Chevrolet pickup truck, which is used by the police. That car, the design of that car, the colors of the car, which is black and white and gray with the words police on the door. It's quite a sinister car for anyone who remembers the dictatorship. It was the car used by the police forces. And you would see, and I remember this as a child, I remember a car like that with 5 or 6 men inside. And it was not a pretty sight in terms of what it meant, you know? And I made sure that we got the best Veraneo, which is the name of the car, in the best shape, and we made it look perfectly like the car from the police forces. And the way it's shot in the film, you can probably tell that myself finds that character very important in the film. So that's one way of going about reconstructing a sense of time, because it's not easy to find that car and to find a good one and to make it work and to get the look right. And for me, it was extremely important, you know? So that's how you build little details of time and history. It's not that it's a documentary, but I actually believe that some fiction features are probably truer than many documentaries.
This could be true.
Mhm.
Although Petra Costa is a brilliant documentary
She
filmmaker
is,
with
yes.
multiple layers to her storytelling. That's
Acosta is doing an amazing
yeah,
job in terms of offering historical chronicles of Brazil.
yeah.
She really has.
Yeah. So back to this car, because immediately, as you mentioned, Wagner Moura's Yellow Beetle, I jump to the opening of your film, which completely draws you in. We're driving with him. He pulls into this gas station. There's a dead body. And the cops who come are completely not interested in this dead body. They just want to shake him down for money. Um, how did you arrive at that opening that is so distinctive and memorable and powerful, actually?
I think there are so many combinations of different elements. I enjoy watching moments of tension in cinema. I think of Hitchcock. I think of suspense thrillers. And if the action is so believable in terms of, this is real world and still the way it's shot, it's so out there in terms of it looks like a movie. It looks like a film. So I like the idea that it's set out in the open in the outback someplace in a little forgotten gas station with this poor guy who's made to work during carnival and there was a theft. A thief came to the gas station and then the thief was killed by the night watchman. And that's it, nobody comes to pick up the body. And I love there is something about a Western in that sequence, which I also love, which has nothing to do with the rest of the film. This is something that I also love. I also like it because you get to know Wagner's character very well. You get to know people very well once you pay attention to how people react to difficult situations. You get to know a friend very well, how he or she reacts to a difficult situation. So that's one interesting entry point for Wagner's character in the film. And I like the upside down logic of the whole thing. The police have arrived, finally, but it's not about the body, it's about something else. Which, by the way, that happened to me. I was shaken down by two cops on Ash Wednesday about 35 years ago. They went through a checklist of things that could be wrong with my car. Nothing was wrong with my car. Even the spare tire was in good shape. And then in the end, they meekly just said, "Oh, just give me something." It's just so humiliating for them. And I just gave them, it wasn't cigarettes. I just gave them, I don't know, $2. It's
And they
just,
let you go.
it's so sad and depressing that it's
Yeah,
comedic in a way. It's
yeah,
comedic. It's funny.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Your film has been described as a deep dive into the history and soul of Brazil and how it's understanding itself. And so I wonder in your cinematography how you and your DP figured this out because there are, as you've said, this opening sequence doesn't necessarily need to be connected to the rest of the film. There are many other surprising elements, surreal elements that come in and go. I mean, it's it's magical, but I wonder how you figured this out.
Well, I worked with Evgenia Alexandrova, who ironically is Russian and based in France. But Evgenia, I guess she's very curious. She's interested in finding out about Brazil. I think she really likes Brazil, loves Brazil. Learned Portuguese in a way that I don't think I've ever seen anyone learn a language the way she did. So all of that, I think, explains the image in the film, which I'm very happy with the way the film looks. Of course, she had a lot of references. I showed her many references, photographs, films from that era. There is a film from 1977, meaning it was shot live on location by Hector Babenco, Lúcio Flávio. It was a major film in the 70s. And we saw the film and says, we should do that wall, we should do those trousers, we should do that car, because it felt right. And it was, as I said, shot on location back in the time. And, I think the great films, no matter where they come from, you look at great American films from the past and it really is a window into the United States. It could be a film from the 1960s or 70s or is same thing about French films or Soviet films. And I really want my films to be an open window to, first of all, to the world, but of course to Brazil because I'm Brazilian.
In your writing process, and it's so interesting that you could transition from film criticism to screenwriting. How did you think about demonstrating the individual within an oppressive system and whether they choose to submit or resist in those little decisions? How did that become turning points for Wagner Moura's character or anyone?
Well, the starting point was this beautiful character. I really love Wagner's character because he's not the freedom fighter that you would probably expect. He doesn't have a box full of guns in the trunk. He's just a loving father, academic, loved his wife very much. Not a perfect man, not a perfect person, but just a really, really great guy. And then he gets himself in trouble because he was great, which often happens in authoritarian regimes. It's like the old Soviet adage, no good deed shall go unpunished. It's like, oh, I have a good idea. Punishment. Don't have good ideas. All right? Keep yourself out of trouble. I really like that in this character in the film. But there is a moment that nobody has ever mentioned in the film, but I think it's very much about dealing with the absurdity of an authoritarian regime, which is, the friends in the registry office, they're asked to show up at 5 a.m. just to be part of this theater of justice because there is a well-off woman who's responsible for the death of a little girl. And one of the ladies who works with Wagner's character, she pretends to be typing, but she didn't even bother to put the paper in the typewriter. So she's just playing like a lazy extra in a film. She's just pretending that she's typing something and it doesn't even have paper on. So maybe that's one way of her dealing with, that level of shit, having to be in that place and to play that game. And why is she doing that? Because she has an appointed job, which means it comes as a favor. The whole thing is very political. Why
It
is she there? Because she knows someone who gave her that, job. And that someone who gave her a job is probably aligned with the regime. All of that is very much about the military regime, but not a word is said about the military regime, but the logic of it is.
Yes, you're making me think because I've spent a lot of time in China and speak Mandarin, so I have a lot of experience early on in Beijing in the early 90s with the iron rice bowl. It's the same thing under the communist dictatorship. People who, they completely don't care about their job and they're simulating
Yeah.
work one way or another. So you directed Wagner Moura to a Best Actor win in Cannes at the film festival. Was that a surprise? Or, I mean, was it something you felt in the process of directing him that you were really building this unique character and he was going to stand out?
I can answer your question like this. I always wanted, I mean, there was no way that this character would not be unique. He would always be, I always wanted the character as written on the script to be unique and wonderful. And I was quite sure that Wagner's charisma, talent, incredible drive and energy would make, it would be a perfect match. And this is exactly what happened. But was I surprised? In a way, no, but in a way, yes, because recognition is not always fair, how many incredible roles we've all seen that didn't get recognition, and how many films we have in the past disliked and got so much recognition. It's all down. Well, part of it is your own personal perception. The other part is how the culture works. Sometimes, I don't know, certain themes are out sometimes. So it just makes films not get the recognition that they deserve. But once it did happen, I'm very happy that Wagner got Best Actor in Cannes and Best Actor in the Golden Globes, and now he's nominated for an Academy Award. And I think I'm happy for everything that the film is bringing to him. I think he deserves every recognition.
Was it in your mind from the beginning in writing and directing your film that it would combine this neo-noir political thriller genre, which is highly entertaining and engrossing, with very serious and real political stakes?
How can politics be as a backdrop if everything we do is connected to political decisions? From the way we travel, from air travel and arriving at immigration in any country, certainly in the United States, to walking down the street to the food we buy, and everything is related to politics. So I don't see how politics can be used merely as a backdrop. At the same time, I don't think politics in capital letters is what, drives this film. I think the film is driven by the human condition and love and affection and hate and violence. That's what drives the film. But you if you had to if you had to edit this film and take the politics out, I think you would probably end up with a 11-minute cut. And the film is 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Is it Recife? Is that how you pronounce? Which is a carnival city, and it's a character in the film in its own way, and you've covered it in many of your films. Were you
Yeah.
about it in a different way with this film?
I think Sifi has become a character in my films, and I love that. I'm not the first filmmaker to turn his or her cities into characters. I think of Agnes Varda, Spike Lee, Almodovar, and Ken Loach, Tom Anderson, who made this wonderful Los Angeles Plays Itself. I think cities act, cities breathe. And Recife happens to be I've been accused of using Recife as my muse. I'm not sure what kind of accusation that is. I just like it,
Yeah.
And it's full of character and it's full of contradictions. It can be incredibly ugly and it can be incredibly gorgeous and beautiful, and yeah, and I've been photographing it and shooting it on video film for since I was in college. 30 wow, 35 years ago now. So when I did The Secret Agent, it's almost like I wrote whole sequences and scenes thinking precisely where I wanted to put the camera. From the foot chase in the end, I knew where I was going to put the camera. And but the interesting thing is a lot of what we did in the city center, in the downtown, it's well preserved, but it's well preserved through neglect. It's just because there is no financial interest in that area of the city, so it's perfectly preserved, but abandoned in a way, So we had to really come in with art direction and some VFX in post. But I think the film has had a very strong impact on Recife, the image of Recife. We just had Carnival and numbers. They are running crunching numbers about the number of tourists who came to Recife because of the film. The film has become a blockbuster in Brazil. So it's fascinating to see what a film can do to a city.
So your films are known for their soundscapes, and you're looking at a dictatorship where the walls have ears, really, and it's very unique. I wonder how you thought about your sound design.
Yeah, I always, since Neighboring Sounds, I have always given a lot of attention to the sounds in my films. I did the sounds for my short films myself, editing and even mixing. And Neighboring Sounds was still, because I was coming out of the short film phase and then I went into Neighboring Sounds. So Neighboring Sounds was still the film where I did the sound. After that, with Aquarius and Bacurau, I worked with great people who have done the sound for my films, but I have always directed the sound. And I believe that I have this idea that if my films played on the radio, you're driving down the road and you tune into one of my films on the radio, it should work as a radio program, it should sound interesting and enigmatic or mysterious or enticing in a way. Um, and there is a lot of construction for the sound in The Secret Agent. Again, I worked with this incredible mixer in France, Cyril Holt, second film we do together. I love him very much. And it's really about keeping the narrative going, making it mysterious, making it sound juicy and crunchy, and making the music come to the foreground. Because if you're going to pay for a great piece of music, why keep it in the background playing on the little radio on the right side of the screen? Just make the most of it. Be proud of it. Make everybody understand that you love that piece of music and that it's great for the film. And yeah, and how lucky that as a filmmaker, I have been working with a great producer who makes sure we get all the music we need, working with pieces by Ennio Morricone. What a pleasure, what an honor.
I love the Mission soundtrack is amazing. Forever.
Yeah, and the music for the telegram sequence, that's Bolo e Bracci, A Guerra e Pace, Bolo e Bracci from 1968. And we could get hold of the rights and use it in the film, and Donna Summer
Incredible.
and so much great music from
I love
Recife
all
and the
that
region.
music. I also love all the films and filmmakers you referenced so far. So, with your film, you've spoken about the 1979 amnesty law and the way Brazil was encouraged to forget the crimes of the regime, which feels very familiar in the United States right now, though I'm in Mexico. But you've spoken about this having to forget the crimes of the regime. And I wonder how that shaped the structure of the storytelling for you about memory and the fragility of it.
I think that's one of the least discussed aspects of the process of writing the script for The Secret Agent, because uh, a, a country that installs amnesia as an objective is really fascinating. 1979 military proposed forgetting everything that had happened until then, all the violence, kidnappings, killings, torture, all the horrible stuff. They proposed that everybody should forget it. And they would even forgive the other side as well, the people who tried to fight the authoritarian regime. And at the time, it was received as, oh, yeah, nice, interesting. Yeah, let's get on with our lives and let's move on, which is probably understandable given the context. But I think on the long run, it was a moral disaster, I think, for my country, because it opened up a window of amoral behavior for the future. And we all know that in an incredibly racist society, a poor Black person might steal a loaf of meat in the supermarket and get 3 years. And a politician who had someone killed might get 9 years and get out in 6 months for good behavior. So all of that has poisoned, I think, the way that my society works, you know? And sure enough, Bolsonaro plotted against Lula. Bolsonaro lost the re-election. His people got together to plot this coup d'etat with orders to assassinate Lula, the Vice President Alckmin, and the Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. And this was discovered. We have all the evidence. Bolsonaro stood in the shadows while about 1,000 maniacs stormed the government buildings on copycat of what happened in the Capitol in Washington. And then for the first time, with overwhelming evidence, everybody was arrested, everybody was convicted, put in jail. Bolsonaro is in jail. And this is the first time that something happens because following the logic of the amnesty law, and this is what the far right wanted, they brought back again the amnesty law card saying amnesty for our patriots. Patriots. So you defecate on the Supreme Court justice's desk and that's patriotism. So I think we're in a better moment now, and the amnesty law is something that should be really looked into, and it played a very important role in my writing the film. I think the last segment in the film, in a strange and emotional way, is very much about the amnesty law. You have a son who has no memory of his father. And his father was a man who loved him so much, and he, as a kid, loved his father so much. But everything was erased, everything was deleted. And he doesn't even have the emotional structure to deal with a new piece of information. So I think that's the tragedy of amnesty by design, you know, as as a tool for power.
And these are the lessons we need in the United States, in all the countries in the world right now that are trending authoritarian. Your film is very specifically Brazilian, but also very universal. Important and urgent. I mean, I don't think we've dealt with the crimes of the past in the United States, and now they're just trying to erase our history.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
ridiculous. I think that's a perfect place to end on. Is that good? You tell me.
It was a great conversation. I think I said about 3 or 4 things that I hadn't really discussed before.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.